Welcome and hello. This is day 17 of 33 days with me, Jelelle Awen, on this metamorphosis process we are going through together. And I'm hoping that you're getting something out of these videos, that you're receiving a sense for yourself of how to apply what it is that I'm offering. And I just feel to extend a big invitation to you also to check out our sessions, the session space that we offer with people. There is me, and I work with women 30-ish and older. And there's Raphael, who is my mate, and he works with men and women. And Gabriel, who is a facilitator, and he works with women and men. And then there's Kalena, who works with women around the age of 30 and younger. So we are all here to provide session space for you to explore these things that I've been offering in these last 17 days, all these places that you can go inside of yourself and discover and explore. And our sessions are ideally weekly with you, every week. We are open to a transition if you can only afford to meet 3 times a month or twice a month. That would be in transition to meet weekly. And our sessions are about, they're 1,000 pesos, which is about, I think, $56 or so for 90 minutes. And I feel like they're quite reasonable and reasonably priced, especially compared to some other things that are out there. And part of this is because the consistency of meeting with you and that it's an ongoing process. Included in the session space is community interaction through a private circle that we have on Facebook for those in sessions. And there will be other things coming too that we're still sorting out around group and how to offer a group experience remotely. So anyway, you can read more about that at our website, soulfulheartwayoflife.com, and I'll link to the sessions page in the comments. So in the comments that some of you are leaving about your experiences related to what's coming up in response to these videos, I'm responding from what I can intuit and feel and based on my experience, yet obviously the deeper, more personalized way would be through session space. That's really where the parts can be differentiated more fully, where parts of you can be felt by your facilitator. And it's really in this being felt space where the deepening occurs. It was in not being felt that the original wounding happened, and why parts of us formed, that's what we feel, is because we weren't felt in our emotional reality, and so things got stuck. Parts of us got stuck, energies got stuck in those moments when we weren't felt. And that begins in the womb. That began as we came out of the womb and interacted and interfaced with 3D energies and just couldn't move. Our porosity, our hearts, our feelings. This is why we come out screaming, and why we spend so much of our childhoods crying, because of this energetic dissonance and emotional dissonance. So we feel there's an aspect of parts development that just happens from coming into 3D reality, and there's an aspect of it that forms from not being felt while we were feeling things by our caregivers. So it was this lack of digestion of what we were feeling that creates these parts, because they basically, a guard comes up, or a stuckness happens in those moments, and we can't move, the parts can't move beyond it, and so they form. They come together into this more structured energy that then creates the masks and the personas and gets woven into our personality. we are identifying in the process and through this series some main energies: the protector, the teenager, the punisher, the inner mother and father. And yet there's all kinds of energies, right? We're just kind of naming the ones that we have mainly seen, plus the inner child, related to 3D reality. So these are the ones that we feel that if you just focus on this protector energy, for example, they can open up a lot. It can lead you to a lot. And that protector will morph and shift and transmute and probably go from masculine to feminine, have many different names and many different faces and forms. And it's so fluid and alive that way. So nothing gets cookie cuttered here. Nothing gets put in boxes. And that's important to realize too, is that the fluidity of this process. It happened in a fluidity. I mean, things got stuck, but these parts formed in response to an environment, and an outer environment that didn't match the inner environment. So as your inner environment becomes more fluid and loving and compassionate, then the parts can become something different. Their environment changes. And of course, what changes on the inside then changes what you experience on the outside. So that was what I wanted to talk about today. Actually, was my main theme, was around the inner relationship, becoming this ambassador of your inner world to then change what you experience of the outer world, and particularly in relationships. So I think almost all of the inquiries and people that we are working with in Soulful Heart sessions right now are connecting to, or in the middle of, some kind of relationship crisis or realization. Relationships are ending and completing quite suddenly in some cases, or they're overdue for completing. And I believe this also connects to the soul awakening. And I've talked about this before too, where the soul is coming in, and we could say coming in then to the 4D self. And the 4D transitional self is saying, this relationship that I've had, and when I say relationship, let's just kind of do a blanket around that, where it could be a friendship, it could be friendships, it could be birth family, it could be a romantic relationship. So we'll just talk about relationships today in a big picture, a big context, and you can apply it to however it fits for you. So the 4D self is starting to wake up, and with that awakening kind of looks around and feels around and sees that this is not what I want anymore, or this just isn't a reflection of me anymore. This is kind of the transition, the 3D self to the 4D self. So there's that aspect going on. This is often the case in relationships that are very long-term marriages, long-term friendships, and birth family. This is the situation where you're awakening and those around you don't seem to be in the same way. And I've kind of summed this up as, I can invite you to come along with me, but I can't make you change and grow. This is a really hard one, because especially for those people that have been in our lives for a very long time, parts of us get very attached and anchored to them. And to feel that coming from a higher place, from a 5D self coming into the body, we can only invite them to come with us, right? Can't make them change. And in that making them change, or wanting to make them change, is one of the places where tug of wars can happen between us and them. That's a reflection also of usually a dynamic going on inside. So in this case, inside of you is a part that doesn't want to awaken and is anchored to 3D for good reasons usually. And then of course your soul self is so wanting to grow and expand. And so you have this inner tug of war going on that's then reflected in your mate or that friend or that birth family. So you're maybe tugging with them or conflicting with them or having difficulties with them, but it actually originates always from within. So one of the big blessings of parts work is that you can start to see this, and you can start to be with these parts, and you can start to become your own ambassador to these polarizing energies inside of you, which changes, of course, what you experience of relationships on the outside and with others. So if this polarization is not going on anymore, I'm doing this because it's vibration. You kind of know when something's coming from fear or polarization when it vibrates energetically. So that vibration and then of course is what is very commonly known as projection. So something going on with you and your parts is projected on to other people. And then it gets quite painful because you're actually trying to feel what's going on with you through others. And they resist, and their parts don't want that because they're doing the same thing with you. So neither of you are actually in the ground where you have the most empowerment and the most capacity toward compassion, which is from in here, right? So from in here, if you're in a situation like I just described, where you're with a mate or you have a lot of friends or birth family or all of the above who isn't resonant with where you're coming from in terms of awakening and what you're exploring and discovering, and there's a push-pull going on around that and a tug-of-war and all kinds of energies like I'm talking about, go within, go inside, and see if you can feel the parts dynamics that mirror this, that are going on inside of you from one part to another. And bring love to that. Feel why that would be scary or frightening. Why the partner that doesn't want to change actually represents a part of you that doesn't want to change. And as you feel these parts, like the part that doesn't want to change, and you start loving them and they start trusting you more and they start feeling more comfortable with change, most likely the relationship with the partner that doesn't want to change is just going to run out of ground. Or maybe your self-growth will inspire them to begin their self-growth, and then you can both feel into this together. That would be the ideal scenario, of course. But what happens in this situation we're talking about is that you no longer tug on that person. You gotta change because you're going here and you're saying, oh wow, I humbly admit I have parts of me that don't want to change. So I'm gonna feel them and see what that opens out. That's one scenario that I'm feeling and seeing. And the other one is more of a 4D based relationship. So you are both awakening. You are both going into these bountiful grounds of soul awakening together. You're having spiritual experiences together, and you really feel and believe that you're soulmates. I have a different take on the twin flame piece, which I call counterpart soulmates, and I believe we may have more than one. I don't want to get into the twin flame in this video, so I'll just link to an article that I wrote about it. So I'm just going to call it counterparts for now. So you have the sense, this is a very important mate for me, and you have new grounds of nourishment that you've never had before, on all areas, mind, body, heart, physical, There's another one, but I can't remember it right now. Mind, body, heart. Anyway. So you have all of these yummy grounds together, and yet the tug of war comes back eventually, maybe right away. And it's this same piece, ultimately, of polarization, where you can't seem to find your way together. You will in moments, and then it'll collapse again. You really want to be together, there's no question of that, it's mutual, and yet it can't seem to transact, or the transaction can't seem to maintain. And I feel that in these 4D relationships, there's a lot of good grounds going on. It's just that the inner grounds are being confronted. Actually, you're seeing the inner work, the inner process that you still have to engage with. In order to show up with something that has a lot of bounty and love in it, you have to have more self-love. You have to have more overflow from within to meet and match those frequencies. And if that isn't happening, then you hit a ceiling. So instead of saying that the relationship ran out of ground, you would say actually that your inner relationship ran out of ground. Your you-to-you-ness, self-love overflow just capped. So there was no more available that could come into the union. And in that case, that leads to completion. So here's another piece too about these kinds of relationships, is differentiating what is transaction and what is capacity. So there's the capacity of the connection, which can be quite amazing. Sacred union, together for life, so much fulfillment, serving love together as your sole purpose, everything you would want from a relationship. And yet there's the actual transactability ground. This is what I'm talking about. This is ultimately about intimacy and vulnerability and transparency and true compassion for each other. That can only come, I feel, from that happening inside of you. That happening from every part of you to every other part of you over time. So it's an ongoing process, right? But this compassion, transparency, vulnerability, integrity, consistency, these are pieces, acceptance, that need to happen from within, and particularly from what's coming up strong for me right now is the protector and the punisher. That can be so subtle, even in the energies that they're operating on inside of you. Maybe subtle, maybe not so subtle. So here, I want to put you into a scenario here. Let's say you're with your person that you consider your counterpart, mate, right? Your sacred union together. And a voice inside of you says, "You're so fat, I hate the way you look when you're naked." That goes on inside, and maybe you're not even aware of it. And you're with your partner physically, and suddenly you have a wall up. Like you feel a guard. You feel like you can't be as open with them sexually as you want to be, and you don't even know why. They feel it. They pull away. Maybe they have a corresponding thing going on inside of them as well. Excuse me. And then suddenly you've got all of this space and distance between you, and you don't even really know why. And where it originated from was inside of you. So feeling then that part of you that made that judgment, and why they made it, and where that comes from, and how that relates to mom, and how that relates to dad, and how that relates to soul themes, that's the terrain where the power is. And it's fascinating. If you are truly engaged with yourself in that way, then the relationship that you have, any relationship you have, is really a bonus. It's a gift. It's an addition to that. It's not that. It's not the substance for which life is made or defines you, because you have that going on within. So as every part of you feels this love and attention from you, and the overflow inside changes, you then can be more in this sacred union that you've drawn, or complete a union that doesn't feel like that, or friendships, or birth family, or whatever you're navigating. And you can be in that with a lot more self-love, which will always translate to more love with others. You think about it, right? Like, love draws more love. So if you're coming from more self-love, that's what you'll draw. And you coming from more self-love may complete some things too. So I wanted to go into that today. That's such a big topic, and I was really general today. So you can apply what I've offered to yourself, and again, Session Space would offer us the opportunity to go in more deeply. I want to offer again too, if you're watching this series and you would like to receive my free book that I recently released called Bliss Mess, just email us at soulfulhearts@gmail.com. We'll send that to you. And in that book, I share more about my experiences with Raphael, my husband of almost 10 years, and how we navigate this ground together. We also have done 2 videos of this series, one of them specifically about sacred union, and I see us doing another one for this series as well. I wanted to mention too that Raphael and I work with couples in Session Space. So that is something that interests you. That's also on our website. So thank you for joining me today, and I'm hoping that this brings maybe some possibilities, actually, some sense of hope or new desires for the inner union that I don't believe has been sold enough in our culture. It's been so much about the sacred union and the outward union, which can't even really transact or sustain without that inner union. So thank you for taking that in today, and see you soon.